Good evening, everybody. And welcome to the September 17th, 2019 Hingham Board of Selectmen meeting. I'd like to call it to order, and I would like to move to public comment for items not on the agenda this evening. Seeing and hearing none, we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is Community Preservation Fund discussion for the South Shore Country Club. Mr. Whalen and Ms. Smith, evening. Good evening.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Christine Smith, and I have been the chair of the Country Club Management Committee, commonly known as the CCMC, since October of 2018, so it's my first year, and I'm accompanied by Kevin Whalen, who is our executive director, who Kevin just celebrated his first anniversary. So thank you for having us. Really, we have two goals for meeting with you tonight. The first of which is to let you know that we did receive a report from our safety engineer. Actually, before I get to that, I forgot to also recognize my fellow members of the Country Club Management Committee. We have Bill Friend here, who's been a longtime member and has done a great job for us, as well as Jack Bailey. So thank you for coming. Who has done a very nice job for us. So I appreciate them being here. And two items are bringing us to you tonight. The first of which is, without giving too much history, I think most people know for the last 5 years we have had a safety engineer at the pool to make sure that what we're offering is safe for everyone, because that is always our first priority. And for the first time, the safety engineer at Apex Engineering issued a report on September 2nd indicating that the pool and portion of the maintenance facility underneath will need to close indefinitely due to the continued delamination of the concrete and erosion of rebar supporting the structure. While we will seek any remedies available, we are not confident that the town pool will be open next summer, and we need to immediately address the maintenance facility in order to service our recently purchased fleet. And we've got some handouts if you want to, I guess you can put them on the packet if you'd like to broadcast it to the audience. So that's a new development. We typically like to come before the Board of Selectmen at the end of the season to sort of review the programmatic, events that took place over the summer, and we also have our members from the Recreation Department here who run our pool facility. So I think we've done a good job of sort of getting the stakeholders in the room, as well as Larry Linder from the CPC, Tom Hoffman and Maureen Pellissier from the Friends of the South Shore Country Club.
Is that an AdCom rep, I think, hiding in the back?
And then I see Julie Straley in the back, who is our AdCom liaison. So this will be news to everyone, not the news that we wanted, but we have had this safety engineer for the last 5 years, so we have an immediate need. The pool has failed, and we're not confident that we will be able to open that facility next summer. And we also have, we've brought with us the memo from the engineer that we'll continue to work with to see if there's any remedies for that. Secondly is, after 12 months with a new executive director and me as the chair, the CCMC has determined that the identified pool project needs to be scaled down, and that a master plan paid for by the South Shore Country Club for the entire facility makes prudent sense at this time. Reasons for this change of direction include, number one, lack of fundraising, disallowing access to previously approved CPC funding. Number two, a better understanding of the club's existing cash flow, as two sets of new eyes have been studying it for the last 12 months. Number three, additional revenue opportunities resulting in a better location of the pool have been identified. Number four, acknowledgement that most residents want to swim outside in the summer while also enjoying a year-round pool in a facility that does not compete with current programmatic offerings at Hingham Recreation. And number five, realization that the entire facility requires capital infusion, but beyond what it can reasonably afford. What we're looking for tonight is the 5 members of the CCMC. We need direction from this board and the town on moving forward with our improvement plan, with or without CPC, state, and any other available grant monies. So we're specifically looking for direction on these 4 items. Does the board support this new direction, and should we move forward with our $2.75 million CPC application? Number 2, can the CCMC access the previously approved $300,000 if the fundraising goal is not met, but we meet the other parameters approved at town meeting, including an agreed-upon path forward with a sustainable operating plan? Third direction. Should we consider the use of the DPW shed on Hersey Street in our new master plan for our maintenance facility, with the other town departments helping to pay for the capital cost of retrofitting that building? And finally, can any additional town dollars be directed to this project? So, to sort of summarize, we've been busy the last 12 months. Maybe it might appear that we've been a little bit quiet, but we've been doing an awful lot of research as two new sets of eyes onto this plan. I know that there was a feasibility study that was done 2 years ago. The result of that feasibility study showed that people wanted sort of a year-round facility to be used as a pool, and it was going to be constructed where the current putting green is, and it was going to be an indoor pool with an outdoor splash pad, a bathroom, sort of more of a recreational use type of facility. And over the last 12 months, what we've really learned is that that $10 to $12 million project cost did not include any other of the sort of facilities that need some capital infusion at the club. So that really just caused us to stop, and we didn't want to go too far down the path before we started spending money that we didn't think we were going to be able to come to fruition with that project. And so with 5 people on the CCMC, we're really sort of looking for some public discussion, about those needs and our reasoning for sort of taking a relook at this project. With that, I know there's some other handouts in your packet that we'll get to, but I think Kevin wanted to, sort of address the most immediate pressing need, which is the maintenance facility.
Right. So currently, as it's situated, we cannot use 2 bays in the garage. I've been discussing with the engineer as far as what those fixes are. He's going to be working with the foundations, the vendor that has done the work.
Kevin, if I could stop you just for a second, just, and I apologize for interrupting, just to give people at home that might not be familiar with the facility, why these two things are tied together, if you could sort of describe the location, I think that'd be helpful.
Sure.
It's easy to get stuck in the weeds for me, sorry.
Yeah, no.
The maintenance facility is actually under the pool. Where the pool deck stops, it's like under the pool deck from where the pool wall ends, is where the maintenance facility is under that structure. So underneath is the report says, and Christine alluded to earlier, is that's where we have some of the cement that is kind of dislodging from the ceiling, and also one of the garage bays. We can actually use that bay, but we can't use the garage door because some of the cement needs to be reinforced. So I've been working with the engineer and also the vendor to make sure that we're able to get what the necessary fix is on a temporary basis to be able to utilize it, because currently we're not able to fix any of our equipment because we're not able to access the garage. So, going forward, we hope to have that in the next, week or so to get exactly what we need to do as a pathway forward to get into the garage. We've moved some of our operations to another portion of the maintenance facility so we can keep doing some of that maintenance work, but we really need access to our lift and things of that nature, which we don't have really any other location that we can move it to. So I'm working in the short term to move forward and get the engineer to work with the vendor and to get the fix there, and then move forward with that fix on an immediate basis so we can have, our operation kind of somewhat back to normal. I think on a long-term thing, we're also going to have to look at some type of temporary structure in case that this has become something more permanent. So we've begun to look at like clear-span buildings and things of that nature that are a little cheaper and more temporary. They're 20-year buildings, but they're considered more temporary in nature and easier to put up. They're like a 2-month delivery. So I've also begun to look at that. All this has happened in the last few weeks, so we've been meeting with different contractors and things of that nature just to get as much information as possible. But the short-term fix will be, one is to fix the garage doors and things of that nature to get into it, and then the second thing would be to begin to look at some other structure to ensure that we have capability to complete our maintenance operation. And so I think, as Christine mentioned, I think, obviously there is going to be necessitate when the pool does go away or that structure goes away, we're going to need a larger maintenance facility beyond, even the pole structure. And so I think, as Christine said, we're going to have to look at, we had a meeting last week with Tom, and I appreciate we got everyone together based on some of the things that are going on, but I do think that, everyone in the room kind of agrees that we're at a point where we need to do a complete master plan, a full assessment of the facility, get all the exact needs of what we need, and then kind of build out from there. The last time that we've had any type of facility assessment was 2006, the report, and it hasn't been a lot of capital improvements since then. It's been more of, as things break, you fix them to keep on going. So I think it's going to be important to kind of do the master plan. We can handle that in our budget. I did show some revenues and expenses and things of that nature. This year, the good news is for us is that the irrigation bond has been retired, so that frees up about $225,000. And of that, like, we did take $90,000 that we'll be paying towards equipment that we purchased this year. So that does leave a delta of about $135,000 that we should have in excess. We came very close to, the expenses, so we're watching expenses. One of the things about the country club is that the revenues have been very steady, over the last several years. We did some things and adjustments this year, which I think we should be able to boost up our revenues from $50,000 to $75,000, but after living through the month of April, where it rained almost every day, I'm kind of reluctant to guarantee anything. But I think we're off to a very good start, and I think we'd be able to handle, within our own budget, the master plan, as far as the expenses of the master plan. And the likelihood that we would spend all the money this year, that it would probably cross over 2 fiscal years anyways, the study as well. So I think that would be the most important thing, is to kind of get the master plan, get going, and I think it would answer a lot of the questions that Christine had as far as, support and things of that nature. And that would also eliminate whether we do have the DPW building, if that's in or out, those type of questions I think could get answered. I think logistically, the DPW building there'd be some issues because it's so far away from the course. And there's other things, obviously, there's a reason why, I don't know why, but why the DPW moved out, so, but it's like, so, but I think, it would be a full assessment of all those different options that we would have, and then coming back and kind of putting a number in the best pathway forward for the town of Hingham and the country club.
And just a very quick question, the temporary fix for the maintenance shed right now, is that a cost that you can handle within your budget?
I would have to wait and see. I believe I can.
Okay.
I believe we can. It's probably going to be, like, the garage door would be probably, one of the fixes that we did to one portion of the building was like $7,500 last spring. So I imagine it would be in that range.
Okay.
We'll have to see, but I imagine it's not a huge thing. It's just the entryway of the garage door, and the bay is fine. So essentially, they would be wrapping kind of the garage door where the door opens. They have to wrap that because a large piece of concrete fell from the corner of that. So he was looking for some reinforcement from that. We've already done the electrical work, or we're in the process of doing some electrical work to move some equipment around to make sure that we can make the space a usable space for the staff.
Okay. Anything else from either of you before we open it up to questions here at the board?
I have a couple of more items, which I don't know if you want to put it up on the screen. But one of the things that the CCMC really realized in working with other town departments is that the South Shore Country Club operates as an enterprise fund, which typically means that you have to be able to, be sort of tax neutral. And we understand that. But the country club was purchased, just for a little bit of context, over 30 years ago for about $8 million with the assistance of both town and state funding. And the town-owned asset is now assessed at over $18 million. And we've had minimal capital investment in the club, and all obligations have been paid as agreed. So I think it was the right purchase for the town, and I'm glad that we own the country club. And I think with the addition of Kevin, with his background, I think it's run very differently than it ran in years past. And I think we really did need 12 months of running the club sort of with this new management team, looking at it and being comfortable with our sources and uses of revenue and expenses. It's one of the only income-producing properties that the town owns, generating close to $2 million a year in annual revenue, which that speaks in and of itself for its value. There's a lot of things that the country club does I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize. As a good town partner, we actually provide all the mowing and field maintenance services provided for the entire town, and we do this sort of, we get reimbursed for, time and materials, but everyone else saves on capital because they haven't had to purchase those items, as well as, sorry, that's my barking phone. Oh, I forgot to turn it off.
I'm looking around.
Another thing that we did that Kevin identified is our weather alert system was not functioning. So we now have a weather alert system that is available to be used by all the town departments. So there's a lot of sort of interdepartmental things that we do that we're not compensated for. And I just want people to keep that in mind as we talk about, trying to access some funds from the town as a whole. We've reached out to a lot of the different departments. Partnership with Hingham Recreation. They have 8 weeks of sports camp, golf lessons, swim teams, swim lessons, summer employment, over 35 counselors, lifeguards, and managers. Recreation camp utilizes the pool and the bowling alley for over 300 kids. Family pool membership, over 200 families. We employ over 35 summer lifeguards, managers. We do the haunted hayride. There's a variety of things that are done at the country club as a service to the full town. SNAP program, a great program started by Warren Pellissier and his board. We do a fantastic summer camp up there, including 32 participants with one-to-one staff. If you've ever seen the SNAP camp up there, it really is, it's remarkable. We employ a lot of Hingham residents to run that camp, mostly teenagers. And we also provide programmatic space, including bowling, for that program throughout the year. So it's a vibrant program that I think would have a hard time functioning as well as it does without the country club. Some of the club activities to highlight. We are home to both Hingham boys and girls golf team, free of charge. We are home to the Notre Dame Academy for the girls. We have junior golf memberships. Over 75 kids have junior memberships. We employ over 20 Hingham College and high schoolers. We also have memberships. The total number of memberships I think that we sold this year was 247.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of a combination of both residents and non-residents, so it's sort of nice to get non-Hingham dollars into the town. I look at it sort of like the meals tax, people that are sort of paying for those services that are not taxpayers. I like that type of revenue. We work with a veterans agent to employ several Hingham veterans. We have Wednesday night golf night, which I participated in as I need to begin golfing again now that I'm an empty nester. We had over 120 participants this year, most of whom were new to the country club. So a nice way to sort of tell the story, because a lot of people don't realize that the Hingham South Shore Country Club is actually a public course. A lot of people, they were from Hull, different towns, they thought it was a private course and they felt honored to play, and I actually had to remind them that it was actually a municipal course. We do the Selectmen's Cup golf tournament every year, which benefits the 4th of July parade. We've provided, golf carts for the 4th of July parade. We've got 7 bowling leagues, primarily senior citizens that bowl throughout the year. We've got the golf simulators, as we've tried to sort of augment our summer business with the seasonal nature of golf with something that's not 100% weather reliant, and we're actually going to be purchasing those golf simulators this year because we'll make more money, which is sort of really what we're looking to do. And home of the Greenside Grill. Anyone that's been up to the South Shore Country Club knows that the Greenside Grill with Frank and Elio does a great job for us. They run the banquets, they have the restaurant, they provide all the services for all the tournaments that run up there, and that's been a nice relationship. And I think people love the country club so much that a couple of years ago, they actually started the Friends of the South Shore Country Club, another Warren Pellissier, Tom Hoffman initiative. It was organized as a 501c3. And the mission of the Friends is actually to support capital projects identified by the CCMC. And so the project that was identified initially was we needed a new pool. And we still need a new pool, but we realized we need sort of a scaled-down version of a pool and other things for hopefully about the same dollar amount. They have collected over $52,000 in cash donations and $66,000 in pledges to date. Over 75% of those contributors responded positively to contributing to the next phase. We've also
Say the percentage again?
75. And I have this handout, as in, and we can put it up for the people at home. It's available. Now, one thing to keep in mind with those pledges, I think we sort of presented it with a certain picture of what it was going to look like, and that's going to change. So we'll have to circle back with all of those contributors. But my hope is, now that they've seen sort of what the change in plan is, maybe a little bit more scaled down, sort of the difference between maybe what I want versus what I need. I know Hingham Recreation is concerned with just the loss of a pool, not necessarily the loss of an indoor pool. So I think that's kind of a nice, a nice compromise, if you will. One of the things that the Friends also did this past year that I was involved with is we actually did a lot of vetting with a lot of different ideas. One of the ideas, we were approached by a land lease company. Would we be interested in just giving them the South Shore Country Club for however long it took, a 30 to a 50-year lease? They can build a $50 million facility, and it'll be more like the Weymouth Club. We decided, the CCMC, that really wasn't sort of a Hingham thing to do, and that wasn't the intent when the country club was purchased. But I just want to let people know it hasn't been, we're not here due to lack of effort on the part of a lot of different people putting together this plan. We've just gotten to the point where we got a lot of stuff we have to pay for, and we need help figuring out how to have everybody pay for it. With that, I also have sort of a general master plan document, which is simple, sort of by design, just to kind of highlight the differences between the last time we were before you. So it's a master plan and estimated costs, just for discussion purposes only, just to kind of get the conversation going. So the first thing is the pool. We put a number, $7 million on the pool, with the goal of relocating the pool to the current tennis court position. The last master plan actually had the swimming pool as an indoor facility that was going to be located on the putting green, for those people that are familiar with it. And one of the things that Kevin was great at identifying was if we put the pool on the putting green, that area with the putting green, the driving range, and the pitching area has really become the outdoor learning center at the country club, kind of like the range, if anyone's ever been to the range, and the range does quite well. We have everything that the range has, we just have to sort of, I think, be better at marketing it and put a little bit of money into it to make it better. So by moving the pool over towards the tennis court, we measured the tennis court. It's just about exactly the same size as the new pool they just put in at the Weymouth Club. So we've actually visited some sites to sort of see what works, what doesn't work. And the current feasibility study showed a 6-lane pool. With Kevin's background in pools and speaking to the swim team, an 8-lane pool really is more of the size pool that works better for hosting swim meets and swimming lessons, and sort of the configuration of it being 75 by 75 feet. You can move lane lines, so you can have lap swimming on one side. It becomes more of a multi-purpose pool. We would also still be interested in doing just a splash pad. With a splash pad, you don't need the number of lifeguards that you need with a wading pool. So there's a lot of nuances to it, but I think it'll be cheaper to build and it'll be cheaper to run, which is something that I'm interested in. Now, we did have, as part of that feasibility study, a town survey that showed 1,500 people responded within 5 minutes, and they want an outdoor facility. So our plan would be to build an outdoor facility that could accommodate a bubble, so that we could use it year-round. And that was something that was actually looked at, years ago, but it was determined that the pool where it currently is would not support sort of the weight and constraints of what's involved with that bubble. And our plan, as we've been working through it, is to say, similar to when we did the field project, that the town sort of has owned an outdoor pool. We haven't owned an indoor pool. So the consideration for the bubble would be that would be a focus of fundraising dollars. And you can actually, I think that will make fundraising a little bit easier because you can actually see it instead of just fundraising towards some, some sort of design ideas. So we've got the pool at $7 million. The seasonal bubble, we estimated at around $600,000 through private fundraising. The maintenance facility, probably around $2 million. You need to identify the best location. We've talked a lot about the DPW facility on Hersey Street. That's something that the town has looked at over the years. I don't know if it's probably not the preferred site, but if that could be dollars that we could use that somebody else would pay for, such as the town or the DPW, to sort of help us pay for stuff, something to consider. The fifth hole location has been discussed. It's kind of a nice spot in the center of the course, or, the current location. If anyone knows, when you sort of drive into the country club, if you look over to the right-hand side where the old house used to be, we have storage containers there. It's close to the MBTA tracks. That's kind of a nice spot, and it's very close to where we currently service all of our vehicles. We would have to move the tennis courts. We can relocate those. Probably about a $500,000 fee associated with that. We can relocate it to the lower field. We can, when we sort of take out that pool, if you think about how much space will be there. So we have a general idea of where we'd like those tennis courts to go. Main building, it's an old building. It's going to need some. It's going to need some help. Identifying some of those capital requirements. And our plan is, as we work through this master plan process, we'll be able to, sort of place things a little bit more safely with the feedback of the town, and then look at the CCMC will pay for that plan, how much those things are really going to cost. And so we've put together, the South Shore Country Club could probably pay about $2 million. CPC, we've asked for $2.75 million over 11 years. That would help us service some of that debt. We've actually, one of the things that we've done is, I've been on the phone quite a bit with Joe Moschino, our state representative, sort of looking at different ideas for how can we bond a project with the state. Can we get some state funding? We've looked at an EPA bond bill, which I don't know if that's necessarily going to work for the pool, but it could work for some other items associated with outdoor activity. We've also, a few weeks ago in the paper, they talked about a Seaport Council grant that's been available. I think the town has looked into that. That's another sort of pocket of money for someone else to pay for our stuff. And then my shortfall is about $3.25 million, which I think we sort of tried to make the case that this is truly a town asset for the town to help pay for. And then in terms of, debt service, we have an old, a debt service schedule showing that on a $10 million bond over 20 years, I don't know what we're currently borrowing at, but at 3.5% interest rate, the first year it cost about $100,000, the second year about $850, which is the highest, and the third year it works its way down to $833 and down from there. So that's what we've been up to, that's what we're looking for feedback on. And unless anybody else, Kevin, did I miss anything?
Cover everything.
I know I talk fast, so I
I do
apologize.
think, I think this is why it's vital, I think, to put, those numbers, make those numbers hard numbers when you do the master plan, and you really find out exactly, all the different things that you do need to do. And you also, it's a process of needs and wants, but obviously when the pool goes away, we are going to need a maintenance facility, at a minimum. I mean, the golf course, again, is 80% of the revenue that we bring in at the country club, so we need to be able to have a functioning maintenance facility for our staff.
Thank you. Questions from my colleagues? Joe?
I'll start by just acknowledging the tremendous amount of work that CCMC has put into this. I mean, it's often behind the scenes, it's often not seen, but we appreciate, I know the town appreciates all the work that you've done, so thank you. This is not easy stuff. My initial reaction to hearing that the pool was going to be closed is, what are we going to do about the summer programs? The SNAP program, the summer camps, is there any planning for any sort of interim coverage, other pools available? I just hate to leave these folks in the lurch. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, Mark Terrell from the Recreation Department, we work very closely together in as far as, offering all the programs at the country club. So we kind of almost had to, we never went down the road of doing this exercise last year, but it's definitely something that we're going to have to do this year. We'll have to figure out different ways that we can, provide the opportunity to offer swimming, and, also at the same time run our camps. We had some brief discussions last year. Obviously, this came to us right after the close of the pool this on this Labor Day weekend, so it's only been a few weeks, and I've been more struggling with the operations side. We do have, several months before we have our program offerings, but we will work together to make sure that we're able to offer and provide, as many services as we can to the children of Hingham.
Do you have a sense of how assuming that there's no swimming pool, how that will affect your budget, decreased revenues, fewer people coming, and...
There's no real revenue that comes from it. It's really a service that we provide, as far as, after I think all the expenses, it's really not much to the rec department, and it's very little to us as well. So from a revenue standpoint, it's not anything that would be, hurt our budget at all.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, so sort of the country club has a partnership with rec, so the rec actually runs all of our pool programs, so we don't collect the revenue, and then we end up splitting the profit.
Okay.
And I think it was probably $20,000?
No, not even.
Maybe that was the total.
Mark, maybe, do you mind coming up to the podium and just so, I don't want the folks at home to miss a word of this, so, okay. That'd be great. If you could just state your name and address.
Mark Thorell, Recreation Director. So the pool's been pretty revenue neutral. We have made some money with the country club sports camp, in that we split 50-50, and I think this year it was about $22,000. But the pool itself, with memberships and swim lessons and swim team, has been revenue neutral with all the lifeguards and staffing.
So I think to Joe's point, it's still a pretty significant offering, and it's something, it's pretty integral to a summer camp kind of program. So I suppose what you're saying to us is you need to huddle on this a little bit and figure out what your alternatives might be. Is that?
Oh, yeah, it's revenue neutral, but we bring a ton of kids over there from our camps here, about 350 children. The Country Club Sports Camp had 435 children over 8 weeks. And the swim team, 75 kids, swim lessons, so yeah, it's definitely a lot of children.
Yeah.
It may be revenue neutral, but it's
But it's
certainly
not
enjoyment.
programmatic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the hard part of a pool, right? Because pools are expensive to run, so everybody uses them, but, even if family memberships, I think we sold 200. So people buy a membership, but it's expensive to run, so it does become sort of net neutral. And when we had looked at doing the bigger plan, there was a plan that showed a pretty good revenue stream, but I think the reason that our CPC funds were so tight was because I think people wanted to move the project forward, but they also wanted to do it in a careful kind of way to make sure that, we didn't get too far ahead of ourselves, because we know how expensive it is. And Kevin particularly knows how expensive it is, having run the DCR pools for a long time at the state level.
One of the things, too, is
Excellent.
like, we do have, it is, nice, the situation is very good right now for the camps, because we have the bowling as well, where kids can kind of rotate through on those really hot days. We can have the kids bowl, stay in the air conditioning of the bowling, so it does work where the kids can rotate through a multiple, number of activities, on our location.
We can't fill a lane with water and
No, you can't. No, I wish we could.
Well, and I think the other thing we're potentially not accounting for is just the spillover effect of, having a population at the club that may be utilizing the restaurant, or somebody playing golf while the kids are at the pool and that sort of thing, and,
Pool is an integral part to the club, it really is.
Yeah,
So I think it's sort of those those revenues that might not be directly coming from the pool, but come from the other operations associated with having a pool.
Right. Okay, well, I think that's obviously something that you're going to need to figure out in the short term. Yeah. Okay.
Did you win on the
You know what,
topic?
usually we kind
I
of,
understand. I just wanted to address Joe's
okay, sure.
point.
Can you,
Do
do
you mind?
you mind? Yeah.
Warren Palisade, 682 Main Street, and speaking on behalf of SNAP first, because Joe asked the question. One of the reasons SNAP just celebrated their 7th year at South Shore Country Club in our 7th summer program. As you know, the kids have to go to school during the month of July. And we have buses pick them up, bring them over to South Shore Country Club. And we've got between 40 and 50 kids at South Shore Country Club, and an equal number, if not more, mentors over there. 7 years ago, when we first started the program, I realized that during these nice hot summer days in July, the kids get a chance to see the pool, but never use it. So for 7 years, we've had the SNAP program, and we only use the pool one day, the last day of the summer program, because there's an open swim during the time that we have our SNAP program there, and we reverse it on the last day, so the kids get a chance to use the pool. So one of the reasons that I wanted to get involved in this very early was seeing the opportunity to have our kids enjoy a swim program as well as the other parts of the country club.
Thank you.
Just continuing on, the master plan budget that you gave us, and this seems to be the year of the master plan. So, are there, to what extent are there spreadsheets or documents behind these numbers, like the pool, the $7 million, and the bubble, 600? Are these estimates, or do you actually have proposals from people, or how developed are these?
The town of Canton is basically in the construction phase, going out to bid on the pool. That would be similar in nature to the one that we're doing. So we're kind of using that as a barometer as far as the numbers for the pool. The bubble, the Weymouth Club, we do have like what they, what their costs were from the Weymouth Club to put the bubble on their pool as well. So some of them, as far as the maintenance facility, I think that one is really, there has been some recent construction projects done, a bit more private courses than public courses, so I think, that number might be a little bit low, but it's probably in the ballpark.
That's
So
the $2 million number.
the $2 million
Yep.
number, right. I mean, because we do have prevailing wage and things of that nature that you have to deal with public projects.
And I think part of it too, Joe, to answer your question, is we didn't want to get too far ahead in spending money to get cost estimates
Sure.
before we knew, so that's, you don't want to sort of put that money out there if it's, I don't want to waste the money.
Right.
And so that's sort of the rationale.
And then in addition to the capital outlay, there's going to be annual maintenance costs. Do you have any estimates for that?
We initially said, I think initially when we started doing this a few years ago, that we were going to start putting aside about $50,000 a year for capital, was kind of how we looked at it. But with an enterprise fund, you're sort of trying to break even and put some aside, for a rainy day.
I think we could get a much clearer picture if, when we do the master plan as far as, and also what the capital investment is. I mean, it's been hard because you're kind of constantly kind of fixing things that, so it's really hard to plan because things constantly come up with the facility in the shape that it's in. So it's one of those things where you're constantly fixing things,
Right.
just to get through the day and make things safe.
The CCMC has their list of 4 questions that they're looking for this board for guidance. I mean, I've got comments on each of them. I don't know if we want to discuss them ourselves, or what's the best way to proceed.
Why don't we have Mary ask
Sure.
whatever questions she has, and then we can kind of circle back through the
Okay,
specific
great.
points, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. A lot of people in this room put a lot of work into this, and you had to make a lot of hard decisions in the last year to get here, and these were the right decisions, and I applaud you. I applaud everybody for making them, and I'm grateful, Kevin, for your efforts, for, the longstanding members of the Country Club Committee who bring the institutional knowledge to make sure that the path going forward is preserving what's important in the country club, but also the new members in terms of bringing different ideas. And I know that as part of that also, there's been a lot of outreach to people to help in the community get excited about that. And so, I think that's really cool. Before we get into sort of some of the questions, I just had a couple of things. Just piggybacking on Joe's question, has there been any work done in terms of sort of the ongoing operating costs of this facility and whether it could be supported by the budget? So in other words, there's both the capital expenditures, but then operating costs. And again, I realize you're very much in the early stages, so I'm not suggesting you should be there. I'm just trying to get my arms around the information that you have.
I would say, without embarrassing Kevin too much, he walks around with a spreadsheet literally in his pocket, and he chases expenses every day. Because I think the hard part about the country club is, we do 30,000 rounds of golf a year. There's no more room to golf, and the golf sort of covers it.
I guess my question, I'm sorry, I probably didn't phrase it well, but if, with this pool project, if I just think about this pool project on its own, do we have a line of sight whether, will revenues and expenses cover each other? Will this, will the 200 memberships and kind of the activity that we have now?
To answer, no, we don't. I mean, I think what we've done is we've kind of looked at, the formal project was north of probably 12, and we've kind of said, okay, that's not going to work. We need to kind of scale it back. Now, there was a peer review done with that project that had a lot of different lines of revenue. I do think we haven't really looked at like all the different revenue streams that this project would be able to produce, and then kind of work back into expenses. I think that's something that we'll definitely do moving forward.
Yeah, and then I'm just, if I'm hearing, and I agree with one of my colleagues, this is kind of the year of the master plan, which is kind of cool in this town. As I'm hearing you talk about some of these different pieces, it sounds like for all the right reasons, you have to think of solutions right now. I mean, we kind of don't have the luxury of saying we're gonna make a decision on this pool in 3 years because we have a facility that's not working. I guess my question is, given the situation with the pool and the maintenance facility, and knowing that you want to put the pool where the tennis courts are, I'm just asking the question, what would a master plan give you? Because in some ways, the circumstances you're under right now are forcing you to make some of these decisions that a master plan typically informs. I'm just, wondering,
Yeah, I think for me, looking at a master plan will bring us a full facility assessment as far as where we stand. And I think also, like, we think that for a variety of reasons, that the tennis courts would be a good location. One, I think because it's kind of, the location is segregated from the rest of the operation to some degree, where they would have their own parking and things of that nature. I believe it's a natural fit. I think if you had someone come in and plan it, I do think the bigger part of the master plan would be the maintenance facility with what that location is and the needs of our maintenance staff. You need a whole environmental center and things of that nature. So I think from that standpoint, that would handle the chemicals, the gasoline, and all of those things. So I think from that standpoint, I think the master plan would be helpful in a process of identifying all the needs that you would have that go into the maintenance facility. And then also, I think, from the end of we do have like a 100-year-old building as the original building. And I think, as far as, there hasn't been a lot of capital put in there. So doing an assessment and kind of looking out what those needs are going to be, going out the next several years as far as what we're going to need to do from capital improvements on the main building as well, I think it would be helpful. Like I said, the assessment, the facility assessment that we did was back in 2006, so it's dated. And so, when I first looked at it, the first, 3 or 4 weeks that I was reading, I was go around and make a list and see if they had done anything based on what the person, the original assessment said we needed to fix. And so a lot of those things haven't been done, some of them have, but I do think we want to make sure that we get one bite at the apple here, and we want to make sure that we do it right.
yeah,
I think so. I think that's the school that I'm coming from, that is a lot of moving parts, and you've got the public, which is very interactive with the whole operation, so you want to make sure that you do it right and you do it safely.
yep, yep.
And I
It's
guess
going to be,
the other piece that I look at too is part of it. I think we have a general idea of where we think things should go.
Right.
But we don't, and we need someone to help say, we think that's right. And we also need someone to help us say, based upon our experience, this is how much we think it's going to cost. And so to me, that's part of that.
Yeah, again, in a perfect world, you'd sort of make the plan, and then you'd start implementing it. And with the circumstances as they are, we kind of have to fly the airplane as we're building it a little bit here, and I'm just trying to think about how that might work.
Right, I think this, part of this discussion, obviously over the last, few weeks, it's been, put more to the forefront, but I think, having, is the DPW building even usable for us? Is it something that we would want? I think all those things we really need, I think, a little bit of help probably to say, that's not going to work.
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of, as you said, there's a lot of moving parts, but, the maintenance facility is one. I think also kind of, even though we believe that that's where the pool should go in the end, and it's a good location, and it's probably a good, safe location, getting the kids and the families away from where the golfers and things of that nature are, and kind of having an area. But I think it's helpful, to look and see where the utilities are, to make sure all the utilities are over there, to make sure that before you go into construction, that it's a good pathway forward for you, and it's going to be the right site from construction, that it's going to be the most efficient site.
What would be the expected time window of starting and completing the master plan? I should have asked that question to start.
I think you could probably do it within 6 months,
Yep.
9 months, probably.
Yep.
Probably would lapse over into next fiscal year.
Yep.
By the time you did procurement and things of that nature, you're probably talking, it would be probably the middle of next year.
Yep, and I guess and we can get to this, but I guess what I'm just kind of trying to think about is fully agree that master plan makes sense, fully agree that we need to keep moving on this pool project. I'm just having trouble synchronizing those two activities, because hypothetically, if there's movement forward on a pool, and let's say the master plan says, we don't want to put it over here, we want to put it there, and that has all kinds of implications. I'm just trying to think through how, together, we work our way through that.
Well, and part of it too is when we did the feasibility study, I wasn't here at the the initial parts of it, but it looked at a lot of different sites. And so within that study, we have a lot of information about why this worked better than something else.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so we do, part of the problem is we have so much information because Hingham is so good at studying stuff, but then it sort of comes down to implementing the stuff, and you want to make sure that you looked at everything the right way, and I think we sort of look at it and look at it and look at it. I mean, I'm comfortable, and even just based upon walking the property, knowing where the sewer is, I mean, there's certain things that we know where they are. You know, it doesn't make sense to put it someplace else. I think it makes sense, and I think our fellow members think it makes sense to put it over there. But I hear your concern.
And last question is, again, I know that we've just started talking about grant funding and things like that. Do we have any kind of a line of sight to, you know, is that feasible in the short term? How, you know, kind of likelihood? I'm just trying to get a sense of what are the grant possibilities, because the economics change quite a bit if those grant dollars don't materialize. And again, I know you're really in the early stages here, so.
I mean, I'll say that's been a huge challenge for me. If there's anybody out there in the audience that knows how to write grants and knows where to find the money, Christine Smith, PFCT Smith, it's hard because sort of you know they're there, but that's not my background, and I don't know how to find them, and I've tried. And I think we're, you know, the state is aware, Joe Moschino's aware, PJ O'Connor's aware, so I think, you know, it's the South Shore Country Club. It's not just the Hingham Country Club. It benefits the South Shore. A lot of people from other communities use it as well. So you know, we use it for SNAP, we use it for special needs, we use it for swimming. There's so many different things that it touches, but the world is so large. I've actually had a hard time sort of putting my arms around it. I know it's there. I just haven't been able to find it. So truly, if that is anybody's field of expertise, please get involved.
Okay, thanks.
So just a couple of things before we open it up. You know, I think echoing my colleagues, first of all, thank you, all of you, for the efforts that you put forth with respect to considering the pool. The CCMC, Kevin, Tom has been active in trying to put the right people in the room who work for the town to help try to consider these issues. The Friends of the South Shore Country Club have been active, you know, since town meeting and trying to draw attention to this community asset. And without this kind of energy and thought, we wouldn't be here this evening. I do think the engineer's letter is a game changer, right? So we were sort of on our path. We had our instructions. We were moving forward, and I think when we got that letter, which, you know, I think is not unanticipated, I think that brings heightened timeline to this particular programmatic asset for the town and for the country club. So again, I appreciate your kind of quick response to this, to get in here early in the process to, you know, bring this to our attention. You know, I do think, like Mary, I was having trouble kind of syncing up the timing of an overall master plan with what I would hope would be the potential to get access to the pool design funds on the early side. And so, you know, to your point, maybe it is a facilities master plan, but you carve out that look, like
Right.
that becomes sort of a given, because you know, again, I'm no master planner, but there's only so many spots that pool can go.
Right.
We've had a pretty fulsome discussion about where it should go in the pursuant to the prior feasibility study. So I guess, you know, I wouldn't be uncomfortable with you kind of calling that out as here's a given in the master planning process. Because I do frankly think one of the things that was missing last time around was this notion of the entirety of the facility of the country. Like the golf course and the golf building have needs as well, and I think there was concern on the part of folks who are in this room tonight that, you know, we support this, but we can't lose sight of the mission of the country club in total. So, you know, I applaud your thoughtful consideration of the pool as a component of the entire facility, but I'm trying to think of a way, to Mary's point, to begin to advance two critical components of that facility, the maintenance shed and the pool, on a track that proceeds in parallel or maybe even out ahead a little bit of the master planning.
I guess one thing that I would like to say, one thing, the tricky, there's a lot of tricky parts to this, but one of the tricky parts is just to remind people that we did have in a town meeting 2018, a CPC article that authorizes CCMC to use $300,000 of CPC money for design for a new pool. But there were constraints associated with that. The first being, we had to do private fundraising for $350,000 to sort of match it. Now, because we have a scaled-down project, that original figure of the 300 plus 350 totaling 650, we're going to have a smaller project, so it's not going to cost as much to design it. So I think that the fund, there'll be less expected, but it would be great, and I think a lot of these problems go away if we can raise the $350,000, and we have to raise it by town meeting coming up in 2020, because if we don't, those monies, you have them for 2 years, and then they go away. And what came immediately to thought was it was based upon a formula. So, 300 is to 350, as we've raised about 130. We have to go back to those donors to make sure that they're okay with this plan. But if you just do the math, can we have a release of those funds earlier rather than later? And then we can actually start that design process. But the other two constraints were that we complete the feasibility study, which we did, and we have to find a path forward and an operating plan with the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee. So we would still need to sort of figure those things out, but we're sort of stuck, if you will, because we haven't raised the funds. Hopefully, people see this tonight and they are willing to open up their checkbook to sort of, put together a nice private-public partnership.
Right after they finish writing the grant.
That's
then they
right.
just-
So I need grant money and I need fundraising dollars.
But there's also, and Joe, just so you know, because I don't think you were on the board when this, in our packet here, in the CPC application, there are the three kind of conditions, and there's a third one, which says the CCMC and the Board of Selectmen have agreed on a path forward to fund the capital for the reasonably estimated construction costs of the facility. So, we've got somebody from CPC here in the room. What I remember was that there was a significant amount of public discussion and discussion within the advisory committee about these conditions. So I'm, like you, I'm looking at these three things and saying, kind of, where do we go from here? And, to Karen's point, the closing of the pool is a new and I think a significant development. But I think as we're looking at this, we have to look at all three of these things, because we have to talk about how to deal with it, because this was a town meeting vote. And so we have to.
Agreed. In a perfect world, we raise the 350, and a lot of that's one problem that sort of goes away. And as time goes, forward, I think we'll sort of see how that effort goes. And I just really hope that now that we have identified the fact that the pool is done.
And I guess I'd say that we sat through several discussions at the advisory committee about this project, and I know CPC wrestled with it as well, because we believe, speaking for us tonight, we believed in this project, and town meeting believed in this project. But one of the things I think we were all concerned about was there were unknowns along the path. And so, town meeting then specified, through the advisory committee's recommended motion, the conditions to the release of the funds. I guess what I'd like to say is, you did exactly what town meeting would have expected you to do, which is, as you progressed, you thought, allocating the dollars in these ways for this project doesn't seem to be responsible at this point in time. And so, I think that there was a lot of trepidation that, the country club would get out over its skis on this, and you haven't done that. And so I think the fact that you're here tonight to talk about it gives me faith that, you're taking to heart, I think, the discussion that we had in 2018, leading up to this town meeting vote. it is a town meeting vote, and so, even if we all agreed tonight that we want to make changes to it, we don't have that authority. So we've got to be able to find a way to work within the conditions and with the CPC, to demonstrate that we've met the expectations of town meeting with respect to this particular grant under these circumstances. Now, the question becomes, do you go forward for a different grant in a different way this year before CPC? And I know that some of that's on your list as well, but.
I just add one thing, and part of what I hope this conversation is doing is not only informing people, but to me, it's really important that with any project, that when it goes forward to town meeting, it goes in its very best light, and that it really does, that it goes forward in its best light. And I think with capital projects, there's been kind of a cadence in Hingham at how those projects go forward. And so I think what we're trying to do is understand how these circumstances, how do we go forward in a way that maximizes the opportunity for kind of a yes vote. So, I would just say that, what I hope you're hearing from this board is that, we're in support. Hingham's had a pool, Hingham should have a pool. I think what we got to do together is figure out a way to do that where it can be successful at town meetings. So as we're working through this, I don't want anybody to think, we're not in support of this or whatever, we think it's a bad idea. We're just trying to help you figure out the path.
Right.
Sorry, I feel like I needed to say that.
No, I appreciate that comment, because just to remind people, an option could be that we don't have a pool, which is not an option that I want to look at, but we know that pools don't generate a lot of net revenue, so it's a town pool. And so, but I completely, I agree, and I think, we're probably going to go for a little while without a pool, but, and the timing of things to make sure that you do it right is really why we needed to have this sort of, public discussion.
And I also appreciate that, you've not only raised money, but, you're acting in a judicious manner, which is you're not spending the money you have until you're sure you have kind of a good design and some good commitment, because, you don't want to spend a lot of money on a lot of different designs. And so, again, I think that speaks to the judiciousness at which you've approached this, and that gives me a lot of confidence in the project and the people that are advancing it forward.
So why don't we do this, unless you have any others?
I just wanted to add in real quick, it's important for the public, I think, to understand, too, that these aren't just programmatic decisions that are being made. They're being made based on, or being discussed based on safety. We're talking about an old pool that's dilapidated. I don't want that point to get lost. This isn't the Country Club Management Committee coming to us and saying, it's kind of old and ugly, let's build a new one. The thing is, it's becoming unsafe, and it's our children in the community that are in this pool for the most part, and not to mention the workers that work under it. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yep.
I do want to make, to the point of safety, we did have inspections, at the beginning of the season as well. So
Always do.
The engineer, inspected the pool prior to the pool opening and ensured that the pool, was good to open and that was safe and it was safe to operate.
Okay. So maybe take a pause in our discussion and ask if there are any members of the audience who'd like to ask a question or make a comment with respect to the agenda item. Mr. Pelletier. I mean, you came all this way.
Thank you. I'm still Warren Pelletier, 682 Main Street. I want to speak on behalf of Friends of South Shore Country Club. So back 7 years ago, when we first formed South Shore SNAP, the partnership with the country club was such a great opportunity for us, because we could actually have all of our kids in one location, in a nice, safe location where we could have our mentors be with them the entire time. But kind of the other side of it was seeing that pool and not being able to have our kids use the pool during that month of July that they were there. and knowing the condition of the pool. So about 2 years into our program, I started to get involved with the country club and Bill Friend and Jay McGrail, and said, hey, listen, this is kind of falling apart here. We're going to do something. I'd love to have our SNAP kids get involved in this. I'd love to have them during the summer program be able to actually use the pool. So we came up with the idea, and I called my friend Mr. Hoffman over there to see if he'd be willing to take this venture on with me. We founded Friends of South Shore Country Club. We got the Hingham Sports Partnership to pay for the beginning of Friends of South Shore Country Club, and we work at the behest of the Country Club Management Committee, who we've got a great relationship with. We work very closely. I mean, my God, working with Christine, a person that knows where every sewer is on the Country Club property, I think that's a tremendous testament.
To what, I don't know, but yeah, yes.
I know how to swim, too.
My speech.
I don't think she brags about that.
Well, listen, I don't know how she found them, but she did. So the goal was that we wanted the Country Club Management Committee to define projects that we could fundraise against. We found a very successful, again, Tom and I worked quite a bit on the field project, and it was we basically raised 1/5 of the funds that were used in total for the fields project, and it became a very successful project, public-private partnership, which I think, just for other areas in town, other uses in town, other needs in town, the idea of a public-private partnership is a great formula to take care of the extras, the needs that are not going to be able to be funded by the town. So we started out with the pool project, and one of the first things we did was, again, together with CPC, our friends at CPC, we were able to put together a request of $75,000 to go through the initial study. And that study sort of pointed us in the direction that we wanted to go. But we didn't stop there. What was important for us is that we didn't want to sit in a room and say, all right, we've got this study there from an outside source, and let's decide what the town needs. We took all the study results and put them in a survey that went back to the town, and we wanted the town's input. As Christine mentioned, we got 1,500 replies within the first 2 days of the study, which happens to be more than any study that I can remember the town has reached out to the citizens. And they spoke very clearly about what it is that they need and what it is that they want. And what it is that they want is that they feel that the town did the right job in buying the buying the country club in the first place. And it comes attached with a pool. That's important to them because they live on the water. They want to teach their kids to swim. They've got elderly parents that they want to be able to have exercise classes in a pool to take the weight off of them so they can enjoy the exercise. They realized that a pool was an important part of the purchase. And as the stewards of the club that we now all own, we have to take care of that pool. And we've done a fantastic job. Christine hasn't mentioned the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the club has turned back into the pool every single year. As you may know, the pool is actually a pool within a pool. In the 80s, the pool was actually retrofitted to put a pool within it because it was leaking so much. So the idea that the country club has not taken care of it is ludicrous. They've done a great job in maintaining the country club at its current, without any capital infusion, and to basically a break-even point every single year in paying off all the debt. So the club has done a fantastic job. So what SNAP wanted to do, what the Friends of South Shore Country Club wanted to do was support the mission of the Country Club Management Committee. So what we did, after understanding what the rules of the road were going to be going forward in raising $350,000 in conjunction with CPC's $300,000, we set off on a fundraising mission. The fundraising mission has produced about $130,000 worth of between cash and pledges thus far, with 75% of those that have donated willing to donate to the next round. What we found, which is a difficult thing, when we raised money for the fields, we could point to the lights and the artificial turf. Those are the extras. The town was going to prepare the fields for the artificial turf and the lights, but we were raising money specifically for those things. This was raising money for a plan. And further, in the CPC memo, or actually what the town voted on, was that even if you actually create the plan, there's still no guarantee that there's going to be a pool built, and there's no guarantee that any further action will be taken. So it became very difficult. It's a difficult task. I'm happy that we got to where we are. I think we can continue to raise money, and as Christine said, we would love people to donate right now. But I think what we were charged to do is we're trying to send to everyone a picture of what it is that they're donating against. The picture that we envisioned when we started this is a lot different than the picture that we see right now. So it's unfair to ask people for money against a design that, as you mentioned, Mary, it's like building a plane in flight. We're trying to kind of manage all these things and then say, oh, no, we're over here.
Yep.
We kind of know where we're going, and Mary, I'm right with you here, because my concern in my overall feeling is that the master plan is nice, and trust me, it's one of the things that I want to follow all the way through with the master plan that we're working on right now with the field project. But master planning is a great idea. But I think we've got to do two things at the same time. We've got to take care of the master plan, and we've got to begin work on a pool, because what happens in a town like ours is that, it's always the fact that the pool is failing. And we've said the pool is failing since I've been involved in it. I've been saying it for 6 years. And I've said it at every public forum that I've spoken at, or anyone that I've addressed, that the pool is failing. The pool has failed. It's a totally different mark, and just as anyone does, they'll find another spot. They'll find other spots to go to. The town deserves that. It's the only public place where you can teach your kids to swim in the town of Hingham. It would be an awful loss to lose that. And we feel very strongly that we'll be able to, we talked about the extras. Well, people want an indoor, and it came back very, as a 80-something% want an indoor-outdoor pool. They want that. That's what the town wants. Well, the town can only afford something that's a little bit less than what we expected, and we realize that, and we're good. We're not going to try to have the town take on more than, we're not going to get our head over our ski tips. We're going to make sure that we reel that in, but at the same time, we want to be able to provide the town what it said it wanted. So we've got to separate the what you get from the town to what you can fundraise against, and we're very comfortable raising 1/10 of the total costs, or $600,000 for the bubble that goes over it, that provides the town the indoor-outdoor pool facility. So we're very comfortable, as the Friends would take a look at this, to help and work with both the Country Club Management Committee. The rec has been great partners, and CPC has been great partners as well. Final point is, just as a citizen of this town, we happened to be at a wedding over the weekend, and there happened to be a lot of Hingham folks there, and a lot of real estate people were at the wedding. And to a person, every person that I spoke to that is in real estate in Hingham said the first place that they take someone from out of town is South Shore Country Club. They show the value that the country club brings at almost no charge to those folks that are moving into Hingham. It's a tremendous asset, and we own it. To me, that's unbelievable. The town made some fantastic choices. Let's preserve them.
Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this agenda item? All right, so I think we return to your tough questions, Christine.
Questions?
And, yeah, and so maybe we move through those
Sure.
one at a time.
So the first question, just, you want me just to remind people,
Sure,
read what
sure,
it is? Just
sure.
I know everyone doesn't have this in front of them. So the first question that we were looking for direction on was, does the board support this new direction, and should we move forward with our $2.75 million CPC application?
Comments, Joe?
I think you're looking for funds, and I don't think that this board has sufficient information to say this is a great application or not, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't go forward with the CPC and go through their process. It's clearly part of what you're going to need to do in terms of timing when you do it, when you have the information that the CPC needs, is really going to be your call and their call. I'm not sure that this board can provide any additional guidance other than pursuing all revenue options.
And one of the reasons that we asked the question is as I found out last year, that if you have a property that's owned by the town, it needs to move forward, I think, with, I don't know exactly how it's written, but it's with the support of the Board of Selectmen. And so that was sort of, one of the reasons that it prompted this question, to see sort of where we end up with CPC.
So just for clarification, and to Joe's point, I think how we've viewed these votes in the past has been a procedural vote, because as you work your way through the CPC process, if you are selected by the CPC to advance, then you move to the advisory committee and back here to the Board of Selectmen. So I think we have taken the approach that we don't sort of comment on these things on the merits, but, we typically will advance the projects through the process. I think there was one holdup in the couple of years I've been on the board for an asset that we didn't really own at the time they came before us for that permission. So, I think to Joe's point, we would view this as a procedural vote by us tonight to just give you the authority you need in order to file your application with the CPC.
Okay, so that's what it would be. So we have the authority to move forward, but there's no guarantee, because that's the CPC's decision.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
And, quite frankly, we haven't seen the backup that we would need to make
Right.
our substantive determination.
Understood.
But we do want to support you in this.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you.
And I guess, for what it's worth, I do support the new direction. I think there's immediacy around dealing with this issue, and I think a scaled-down project, I think, to me, provides us the best opportunity to move forward quickly to try to address the issue. So and having said that, I think I am concerned, as Mary's expressed, and as I think was expressed in the consideration of the project in 2018, and that is being able to understand not only debt service, but the ability of the pool to support the operating costs of the pool. So to me, that would be something that you'd need to sort of build out as you move forward in the process. But I support the new direction of the project.
The second question, which is, can the CCMC access the previously approved $300,000 fundraising goal? If the fundraising goal is not met, I think the answer is a clear no.
Right.
I think you've been
I don't think
creative.
that's our decision. I think that's, I view that as a CPC,
It's a contractual constraint in the agreement.
yeah,
so-
but the contract is between the applicant and the CPC, so,
But I think it actually goes further than that, as you pointed out. I think it's really a town meeting vote.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know
Yep.
that, and I
Yeah.
mean, you know.
And that could also offer, Christine and Larry, to the extent that they need
talk to John
assistance.
Coughlin.
John Coughlin is
Yeah.
always available as well,
Yeah.
as is Rick Manley, who may also have an opinion on
no,
that.
One second.
I don't want to complicate things.
I do all the time. So.
Part of, I'm sitting here really wrestling with this language, and I think a question that you may want to ask yourselves is the path forward easier if we submit a new application than try to fit this project into all these requirements? And, again, I know that CPC ideally in the past says, you come for design, and then you come for bigger money. I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule there on that, but we're in kind of some unique circumstances. So would we have the flexibility, for example, to ask CPC, I'm making this up, but for $3 million, where you say $300,000 of it is for design, and if these hurdles are met with this 300, then we go for the other piece. That may be too complicated for CPC, but there's part of me that feels like trying to conform to that original 2018 vote is an additional complication on what already is feeling kind of complicated.
And so some of it for me, too, is timeline, right? Because there's some, and Larry, I know you wanted to make a point. So there's something that I like about the fact that the money's in the bank, and if we can figure out the way to, figure out the conditions to get the money out of the bank, we can move forward as soon as we can do that. But I don't know what that timeline does and how that constrains your ability to expend those funds with a timeline along the CPC timeline now for money that you have maybe a clearer picture of how you might deploy.
Right, and Larry and I, is probably what he wants to talk about, because we had talked a little bit about this, that timing, everyone wished they had more time and more money, and I wish I had both. But timing-wise, if we don't have access, if we don't meet the goal to access the $300,000 from CPC, we have not submitted an application to be reviewed at this upcoming town meeting. So if we don't meet the goal, we're sort of dead in the water.
I thought you were
because-
going to put in this.
But.
You have
but,
one in right now.
Larry, do you, I don't know if you want to.
So the idea would be you'd almost let, and then, come on up, Larry, you'd let the current grant lapse,
Right.
and you would and you would convey that understanding to CPC, and you'd say, we've had the benefit of some additional time and thinking about this, and now here's what we want to do. So you would let the original money go.
Right.
And instead, to Mary's point, maybe you build this out to include design funds, and then this is your ask. And I guess my question that I don't know the answer to is that a quicker way to cash? And cash that you can spend more
Right.
directly? Or do you continue on the path with the existing grant and try to free up those funds as quickly as you can? But then you also have got to meet, they're pretty high hurdles
They are.
in those conditions. So
Right.
I'll stop talking and let Larry talk.
Hi, Larry Linder, 22 Water Street, current chair of CPC. So I think I'm speaking for CPC as a whole. We've only had our first meeting of the season, and the things we talked about wasn't everything that was talked about here, but my understanding so far is that CPC would agree with the majority of the selectmen that we can't release some or all of the funds unless all of the conditions from the vote from town meeting 2018 are met.
Okay.
So and I've started actually a discussion with town council about it, and I can continue it if that's something that the country club wants us to get a more definite answer on, but we're thinking it's not our right to
Right, sounds pretty
change,
definitive.
to change it up. And I think that, I don't think there's anything rules-wise that precludes the country club from saying, let's forget about the grant agreement from 2018, and let's add that 300 to the current application. There's nothing that doesn't allow that, so
So allow it under, you mean, so do we have the ability to add to the 2.75? Or are you saying within that
You
2.75?
have the ability to add to the 2.75. The preliminary applications that were due August 28th were preliminary.
Okay.
And not just for your project, but for the many others.
Right.
The numbers bounce all over the place
Right.
through, into January. So
Right.
that, you
Okay.
can, yes, the number can change.
Okay, because, and I know that part of the preliminary application is just, there's not a lot of information, there's a little bit of information provided, but there's a lot of information that is asked, recommended or asked to be provided with the final application. I know a lot of those things we don't have because of the fact that we sort of changed direction.
Right. And that's another important point, Christine. The number can change, and the scope of the ask can change. What you're asking for can shift. You've got that preliminary application in, and
Okay.
now we can dance.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit more, and Larry, can I just ask you a question, because I know, this town always has, there's always a lot of capital needs and not as much capital funding. And so when it comes to making a CPC application, and I haven't looked down the list of requests, but do you prioritize for, something that's a town project versus a non-town project? Can you just talk us through that process, or is it just sort of the merits of each project?
Well, just in a very broad, like from a drone kind of view, we try not to think of who owns what, but what's the value of this project to the town?
Okay.
What's going to benefit the most people, and all kinds of considerations within that. Can money be gotten another way, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, all right.
And you have a really hard job.
Yes.
And I would say that as we're thinking about this, it would be a good idea, and I'm glad that advisory is also in the room. One of the challenges CPC has is you get more requests than available dollars. And so, you're also thinking about making those dollars work in the community as quickly as possible. So CPC, I think, wants, with that in mind, let's say you have kind of a design period. I just think the sequencing of this will be something that we haven't done yet with CPC. So the early relations with Larry's team, with the advisory committee, I think are going to be really important, because this could be an unusual event for CPC.
And just to procedurally get the, whatever the cadence is going to be, to understand how this, if this is the route you decide to go, how this would move through the process. So I agree, I think.
Okay,
Anything else, Larry?
No, that was it.
all right. Thank you,
Thanks.
Larry.
Sue Sullivan?
Sue Sullivan, and
Do you mind coming here? Sorry. Everybody at home wants to hear from you, Sue.
I think that's done enough. I'm going to speak as a resident, as opposed to, I am also a member of the CCMC. A question for the Board of Selectmen. In the absence, as we're looking at this, we are now in September. CPC, if this goes forward as CPC with design funds built in and the whole thing, we're looking at April. That means we've now got October, November, December, January, February, March, all of this time not doing anything. And probably puts us back a second year before we could be out of a pool 2 years. is there any emergency funding through the Selectmen's office and all? And I'm asking this purely, I'm not putting you on the spot, I'm just asking because I don't know the answer. When we have certain things in town that become critical, would this fall under that for those design funds? We're talking $300,000. And could they be accessed more quickly than?
I don't know the answer to that question. Do you?
Well, I could say that, in general, the emergency funding that we as a town have is called the reserve fund, which is $550,000 for the whole year. So that's to cover, an axle falls off a police car, or, we have a storm and there's all kinds of damage. And so that has to carry us through to June 20th. From Mass General Law, we cannot the only thing we can deficit spend on is snow and ice. So if that reserve fund is depleted before the fiscal year is over, we have to call a town meeting to make like a reserve fund transfer. So
we don't have, we don't have money sitting in our budgets in this.
I just didn't know.
No, it's because
It's a good question.
because it's my concern too, is that the timing is critical.
Right.
When the middle school, so just, if we remember back to the middle school, that was when we had an asset where we did this. The MSBA came in within a couple of days, and, a special town meeting was convened to ask the taxpayers of Hingham. I mean, in this government that we have, we can't authorize spending. The advisory committee can authorize the use of the reserve fund, but that's typically for
Right.
unforeseen and emergency expenses of a smaller nature.
Yeah, I was going to say 300,000 would certainly take,
Right, right.
thing.
But I mean, it's worth thinking through, like, it's a point that we can try to follow up on.
If there's any other mechanism.
If there's any
by
other
which we
way.
can-
I would just also say that, as we're looking at all this, just let's also keep in mind that the taxpayers of Hingham are going to be asked about a number of other capital projects, Foster School being in the forefront. And again, if our goal here is for every project to advance with the greatest likelihood of success, we have to ask ourselves if kind of trying to push this through on an accelerated basis is actually in the project's best interest. And, Christine, as you said, Hingham, we like to vet, we like to study, we like to kick the tires. When this goes forward for a decision, we want a yes. I'm not sure that trying to go a path we've never gone before, when we have a potential school on the horizon, is in your project's best interest.
But I guess if what you're saying is what we're trying to do is just be able to get more information more quickly. We're not putting a shovel in the ground, we're just trying to get the planning going.
And the only thing that I'd push back on that a little bit, Mary, is that it's very hard when you get to town meeting, if you don't have a design yet, and you're saying, here,
Yes.
we're going to do something, and we're asking for this money, both for the design and the construction, and trust us.
Yep.
And so I guess when I look at the best possibility for success, it would be really great to have at least a design to be able to say,
Right.
here's what we're doing, we're not going over the top, we're doing exactly what the town has asked us to do.
That's fair, Sue, thank you.
And I guess the only thing and I agree with you, Sue, but my hope anyway is I don't know how much we can actually get done with this master plan funding through the CCMC, but, we can have, I think, a pretty good document that if we're at town meeting requesting CPC funds, I think we can offer up, I think pictures are worth a thousand
Well, and I
words,
think
so-
frankly, I think you're going to need that to
We will.
to progress through, in my view, you're going to
Right.
need that to progress through the CPC process
Right.
anyway. Any further comments or questions from the audience on this, on that part? Okay, so, I think, I mean, in my view, you know, you tell us, I don't think, to me, it's worth continuing to spend legal dollars on this question. I don't think it's, I guess I don't think it's an open question. Okay. Okay, should we consider the use of the DPW shed on Hersey Street in our new master plan for our maintenance facility with other town departments helping to pay the capital costs of retrofitting the building?
So the only thing I would add to this conversation is, and Kevin can certainly speak for the operational needs of the country club better than I can, but we did have a discussion with some staff. We brought in some zoning, building, and fire and the like, and some other department heads to try to flush out some of the, at least the early conversations that they're going to be hit with when they get into this master plan discussion. And one of them was the use of this building. And a few items that came out of that conversation were some environmental concerns regarding connecting that property to the country club in terms of pathways and the like. That was one. The other was the operational use currently of that facility. The DPW does use that, so that operational use would have to be shifted elsewhere if we were to use it for this purpose. The third is the cost of improving that facility and what that would look like. Now, of course, that would have to be weighed against the ability of using that, or the reality of having to build a different facility somewhere else. But and then the fourth was that, just as Kevin had mentioned earlier, just the distance. It's a quarter mile or something.
Quarter mile each way.
Each way. When you're on a mower, it may seem like a short distance, but when you're on a mower, it takes a while. So, and, you're going through some areas. So it's a difficult spot. I understood it's an adjacent property, but it's probably a difficult spot. It seemed to be the consensus of the group that we were with.
Do you want to make any comments, Kevin?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to make any additional
No,
comments?
I just said that I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure before we started this process, that we didn't go down the road and then why didn't you look at the DPW? So I think we wanted to stop there first and then have that eliminated and then move forward. So that's kind of where we were coming from the country club. For us, it's nowhere near ideal. It would be, I think, we would probably have to have some type of outbuilding, on the course as well.
Someplace else, right.
So I think, for all those different reasons, we didn't think it was the right place, but we wanted to make sure that we started there first, so people didn't go down the road like you didn't look at the DPW building.
Okay. Joe?
I mean, I think, from what we've heard, you've considered it, and it's now a low-priority option, and I would move forward to other options. Yep.
So I guess this is another one of those kind of timing issues where, you need a maintenance facility. So, again, sort of money-wise and planning-wise, I guess I just don't fully understand how this is all going to progress, but this also needs to be, in my mind, on an accelerated timeline.
We'll see what we can do as far as with the master plan, getting things in place. And we've talked to individuals that have designed other maintenance facilities, and they've, given us proposals, to basically kind of list all the different things that we would need. So we do have that. And, I think, like I said earlier, we're going to have to do things on a short-term basis just to ensure that we have continuity in our operations. And then, the second part is kind of looking long-term for the real solution.
Right. And I guess, and the CCMC's probably already done this, but I think in order for this to be an efficient process, I think the inputs on the front end, the questions on the front end, the framing of the questions, I mean, not to predetermine the answers, but to make sure that what you get on the other side of this is usable to you. I think you're going to need to spend some time making sure that the front piece of this is, a thoughtful rendition of what your priorities are and what your concerns are, I would think.
One just additional thought on that, just to kind of put a bow on it, is, and I know we've been talking about this pool project over at the country club for a couple of years now, and it's certainly an important focus, and we talked about the importance of that facility, the pool facility specifically with regards to our rec program and generally with the youth in town. But we can't lose sight of the less sexy project, which is the need for a maintenance facility, because quite frankly, that drives the success of 95% of the revenue generated at that facility.
Yep.
So that is extremely important. I'm not trying to downplay the other by upplaying that, but we definitely don't want to lose sight of that. And Kevin and Christine and I have talked about that, so.
Yep. So you're clear on that? I think we're, okay. And then, last but not least, can additional town dollars be directed to this project? You know, it's a difficult question to answer tonight. I think that, you know, and I'm sort of jumping in the middle here, but, you know, I think you've clearly demonstrated a couple things. One is, this is a community asset, and I've said that before here. And two, there are costs that are absorbed by the country club and within the enterprise fund budget that actually are potentially allocable to, you know, different units across the town. So, you know, again, it's hard to kind of get our arms around tonight how that would, what form that would take, where it would come from, and that also, that the allocation of those dollars would also be a decision for, you know, for town meeting to make. But, you know.
And answer, can I, so there's a lot of talk about sort of town meeting tonight and procedurally. So could the CCMC forward, you know, a warrant article for town funding of the South Shore Country Club, whether it be for a pool or a maintenance shed, maybe pick a specific thing that we'll have a better idea on the cost of it? Because one of the things that comes to mind as I was looking at the warrant from last year's town meeting is I know I happened to be the chair of the school committee in 2009 when the bottom fell out and we had, you know, 8% in fund balance, and this town worked really, really hard to get that fund balance back up to maintain our AAA bond rating. But now we've got a little bit more in fund balance than is dictated by the financial policy of the town. And I understand why we're looking at a lot of, we have a fire station, we have a school, we have a lot of different priorities. But now that we've had this fail of the pool, could that be considered as one of the needs for potentially using that sort of excess in fund balance? And would it make sense for this committee to move forward with a warrant article to that? I don't think you can make a warrant article for fund balance, but I'm thinking of a warrant article that just addresses the fact that this is a town asset that needs additional funding, maybe beyond funds that are available through the CCMC and grants, that we'd have to look to the town to support some of that. How do we go about doing so?
Well, I mean, do you want to respond? I guess I'm not prepared to go there tonight.
Okay.
I support the project. I think that, again, I think you've demonstrated that it's deserving of town support. But I think, to anticipate a warrant article for the country club tonight, to me, is beyond the scope of the discussion.
That's fine, and I like to hear that the Board of Selectmen support sort of a new plan, because it's new information. I'm just sort of putting it out there, sort of for the folks at home, and too, for people to understand the way this process works and why. And I think we've really done a good job of looking at a lot of different options, and I appreciate the fact to talk about them in that.
Yeah, no, and I think in the short term, we would and should, answer that question. I just don't know that.
Okay.
I mean, maybe my colleagues have other.
We're prepared to go in that direction.
I agree with that. I would just add that I think any time any group in town is asking town meeting for money for capital, whether it gets absorbed into the operating budget, which means that those monies aren't available for other things, or we're asking the town if we can, do a debt exclusion, which is a 20-year increase in taxes. It really has to be vetted and well thought out. And again, you want to put your best case forward, because it's hard to rebound from a no. Mm-hmm. And I think that we have some projects recently in the town that have been successful at town meeting, and others that through the warrant process were unsuccessful, that you can look at and learn from. Because an important thing with any project is it ready for town meeting? And I think you're embarking on a master plan, you're doing a lot of things. I don't think any of us can answer a question like that tonight, not financial stuff aside. I'm not sure that your project is far enough along to ask that. It's the right question, but
Right, no, I understand it, I just want people, sort of, the taxpayer to understand that the Board of Selectmen does stand behind the project, and I think that makes it easier to fundraise against. I keep having my public-private partnership hat on, and just trying to think of a way to sort of, access those private dollars, and I think knowing that the town stands behind an asset is important for people to hear.
I would also just add that, as we're looking at the financial health of the town, and as we're looking at capital projects, I would say that, in particular, as we're looking at the possibility of Foster School and the question of, will the MSBA partner with us or not, I think regardless of whether a school is built with or without the state assistance, it's going to be a significant tax increase in the town, and I think we just, as you're asking, and it's the right question to ask, I think other groups in town are looking to see if there are some resources available to reduce the taxpayer burden. So, that excess fund balance is, a lot of people are aware of it, and so, look, it's a good thing, and
Right.
it's great that we have that. And certainly our advisory committee colleagues would have a point of view on that as well, because it's, part of their financial policy.
Okay.
I was going to joke that I pull out a $5 bill, but I think Christine would take it. So
She would take
I
it.
didn't.
I definitely would.
Listen, I think this was a really, really great discussion tonight. In some ways, we had the luxury of just having you on the agenda, so we were able to kind of take our time and explore a number of aspects of all the work you've been doing and the questions that you'll raise and continue to raise with all of us. In terms of fundraising, I don't know whether you want to give a plug to the Scramble on September 30th.
September 30th, we have the Hingham Scramble. We have some foursomes available. It should be a good time. So it's, all the money raised go directly back into the course. Last year, we did the fifth hole, which looks really
Beautiful.
tremendous.
Yep.
And Jake Silver, who is our golf superintendent, does just a wonderful job and continues to do magic out there every day.
It's a great outing. The course looks wonderful, and it's going to be a beautiful day on September 30th, so get out there.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and thoughtfulness and
Thank you.
input. Thank you.
All right, thanks for all your hard work. Thank you. I think we have a couple of votes before we get to our reports. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thanks, Bill. All right, we have a tunnel cap art walk and a craft market.
I did speak with both the police chief Olson and DPW Superintendent Sylvester, who have both said they reviewed this, they're fine with it. It's an annual event, and they've never had any problems.
I talked to the chief as well about both these things, and I got the same readout you did. Joe, any questions on these?
Nope.
Mary? Nope. I'd entertain a motion, or motions.
Oh, I move that we approve the request of the Hingham Downtown Association to use the sidewalks and tunnel cap for the Hingham Arts Walk on Sunday, October 20, 2019, from 12 noon to 4 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Mary, how about a
Sure.
motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request for the Children's Craft Market to be held in conjunction with the Hingham Arts Walk on Sunday, October 20th, 2019, from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, Selectmen and Town Administrator reports.
Nope, I'm good tonight.
Thomas,
Thank you. It's a Paul.
channeling Paul. Joe?
No, I'm fine.
Mary?
I'm good.
So I think Mary and I, are you going to lunch tomorrow?
Yes.
So we have the Elder Services Volunteer Appreciation Lunch, one of the great all-time events of the calendar year that we're really looking forward to. The volunteers, as we've said on more than one occasion here, make possible enhanced programmings at the senior center, ride program, a number of things that we couldn't do, wouldn't be able to afford to do without the talented and dedicated volunteers. So really looking forward to celebrating all of them tomorrow at lunch. And then Keith German was kind enough to pass along the half-staff, flag at half-staff notice for September 21st. And I don't know if you're like me, sometimes you drive around town and you see the flag at half-staff and you wonder why. And we are typically notified as to why that is. Sometimes it's pursuant to an order of the governor, and in this case, it is reflective of the passing of Walter J. Bartlett at 90 years old. Mr. Bartlett joined the Navy at 17 years old and served through World War II. In 1953, he joined the Hingham Police Department, attaining the rank of captain until his retirement. The flag here will fly at half-staff on September 21st. We offer our condolences to Mr. Bartlett's family and thank him for his service. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.